Mr. President, I'm so glad you're in the chair while I make these remarks. I want to salute you for your service in the Senate and your service to the nation. One knows you're a member of the United States Marine Corps, though you no longer wear the uniform. I believe once a Marine, always a Marine. And your service in Vietnam and to the nation as Secretary of Navy is just well known and well appreciated. You know, Mr. President, you've served as a Marine Corps, in the Marine Corps and as Secretary of the Navy, and now you're in the Senate as a member of the Democratic Party. You really serve the nation. And you know, I come to the floor today to talk about cybersecurity and the need to pass cybersecurity legislation this week in this body. And Mr. President, I come to the floor not as a Democrat, I come to the floor as a patriot. I say to my colleagues in the United States Senate, this week on this floor, the United States Senate has a rendezvous with destiny. We have pending before us cybersecurity legislation, a framework to protect critical infrastructure, the .com world, against cyber attacks from those who have predatory, hostile intent to the United States of America. Now, we are bogged down. We are not moving. We're once again following what has become a usual pattern in the Senate, that when all is said and done, more is going to get said than gets done. But, Mr. President, I say to you, and to anyone listening and anyone watching, we cannot let that happen. The United States of America is in danger. And this danger is not something in the future. It is not something written in science fiction books. This is not the wave that's going to come. It's happening right now in cyber attacks on our banking services, our personal identity, our trade secrets, things that I'll talk about more. Now, the naysayers here say we can't pass this bill because it'll be over-regulation and it will lead to strangulation. And oh my gosh, we can't ask the private sector to spend one dime on protecting itself. Well, let me say to my friends, because I respect healthy criticism, but I want them to know that if anything happens to the United States of America, if the grid goes down, if NASDAQ goes down, if our banking system goes down, when we will not be able to function because the street lights won't be on, that we won't be able to turn the electricity on, I will tell you what will happen. Once again, politicians will overreact, we will overregulate, and we will overspend. Now, in a very judicious, well-thought-for, well-discussed process, we could come up with a legislative framework that would defend the United States of America and at the same time balance that sensible center that another great patriot, Colin Powell, calls us to do. Always look for the middle ground while we look at where we want to go. Now, there is this cyber war, and I want everybody to know about it. The cyber attacks are happening right now. Cyber terrorists are thinking every single day about attacking our critical infrastructure. There are nation states that want to humiliate and intimidate the United States of America to cause catastrophic economic disruption. How do they want to do it? They want to take over our power grids. They want to steal, they want to disrupt our air traffic control. They want to disrupt the financial functionings of the United States of America. Cyber spies are working at breakneck speed to steal many of our state secrets. Cyber criminals are hacking our networks. Cyber attacks, so what are we talking about on this bill? We are talking about critical infrastructure. Now, Mr. President, I'm a senator from Maryland. You're a senator from Virginia. Remember that freaky storm a couple of weeks ago? Remember Pepco? Oh boy, I'm still got my ears ringing from my constituents calling about Pepco. I can tell you what it was like in Baltimore when that freaky storm hit. You couldn't get around. The stoplights were down. It was like the Wild West getting around. You could go into stores if they were open and nothing functioned. The lights weren't on. The refrigeration was off. Business was losing hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. Families, like a mother with an infant child and another child with no electricity for 5 days, going to a hotel room. Now, you want to talk about this bill cost too much money? Just look at what it cost the National Capital Region of the United States of America because of a freaky storm. Now, it took us 5 days to get the utilities back on because of the utility company. But what happens if our destiny is outside of our control? That the cyber terrorists have turned off the lights in America and we can't turn them back on. It's going to cost too much? Hey, wait till this kind of thing happens. I don't want it to happen. And we can prevent it from happening. And we can do it in a way that understands the needs of business. I want to understand the needs of business. But I sure understand the needs of families. I need to understand the effects of small business. For those who say it's going to cost too much and they have the concerns of the Chamber of Commerce, fine. I don't want to trash talk them. But my father owned a little neighborhood grocery store. I know what it's like when electricity went down. My father lost thousands of dollars because the frozen food melted. Lost thousands of dollars when we had a freaky storm because the refrigeration in his meats and products went bad. My father lost thousands of dollars years ago in a freaky storm. Mr. President, this bill means that if we come up with the kind of legislation we want, we can deal with it. Just remember what critical infrastructure means. It means the financial services. It means the grid. So when there is no power, schools are shut down, businesses shut down, public transit is crippled, no traffic lights are working. And by the way, over there in Virginia, didn't the 911 stop working? And they're still investigating? Don't we love to investigate? Well, right now, I don't want to investigate and I don't want to castigate, but I sure want the Senate to be able to get going. And then there's the issue of financial services. The FBI is currently investigating 400 reported cases of corporate account attacks where cyber criminals have made unauthorized transfers from the bank accounts of United States business. The FBI tells me they're looking at the attempt to steal $255 million, an actual loss of $85 million. Hackers have already going into the New York Stock Exchange. They've already going into NASDAQ, and the attempt to shut down or steal information. Gosh, if we allow this to continue, it could attack and cost us billions and billions of dollars. Mr. President, do you remember in 2010 we had a flash crash? New vocabulary, new things out there. The Dow plunged 1,000 points in a matter of minutes because automatic computerized traders shut down. This was a result of turbulent trading. But just imagine if terrorists or nation states that really don't like us, and I'm really not going to name them, but we really know who they are, really create flash crashes. Now, I know that there are patriots in this Senate who have really been the defenders of the nation in other wars. They have said themselves that they worry about the Asia Pacific. They worry about China. You know, I worry about China too. So while we're looking at the defense authorization and appropriation, and people want more aircraft carriers to defend us in the blue water against China. Well, what happens if there's a cyber attack? Now, we do know how to protect .mil, but do we want to protect also .com in the same way? I think so. Now, I want to salute Senators Lieberman and Collins. They've come forth with the bill that does two things from a national security perspective. First of all, it tells business you voluntarily could come in. There is no mandate to participate. But if you do come in, you will get liability protection. Wow. In other words, we're actually going to offer incentives. We're actually going to offer good guy bonuses. We're not going to do it through tax breaks or more things to add to the deficit or debt. We're going to say, come on in, participate in both the setting of standards, we want you at the table, and then living by the standards. And for that, you will get liability protection. Now, there is also those who say, we just don't like Department of Homeland Security being in charge. We worry about a cyber Katrina. You know what? I worried about that too. But I must say, in all of our meetings, we can see that the Department of Homeland Security has made tremendous advances. I've been one of their sharpest critics in this area, and I've been skeptical from the beginning. But now as we've moved along and listening to Secretary Napolitano and General Alexander, the head of the National Security Agency, on how they can work together, honoring the Constitution and civil liberties, I think we have a good bill. Why do we need this bill? Well, General Alexander, who heads up the National Security Agency and the Cyber Command, says that we are facing attacks and potential of attacks that are mind-boggling. He talks about the stealing of trade secrets that amounts to the greatest transfer of wealth the country has ever seen. He worries about the security of the grid. He worries about financial services, while he also worries very much about the .com. But, Mr. President, you know, we live in the United States of America. We have constitutional government. Our military, no matter how powerful and how strong, has a responsibility to do certain areas, but we need a civilian agency in charge of how to protect .com, a civilian agency benefiting from the incredible turbo intellectual and technical power of the National Security Agency. So we've got a bill that offers the framework. I would also say, let's have a bill. Let's vote for cloture. Let's have a regular order with actually germane amendments. We have patriots here, but we need to act like, who are we for? Are we for protecting America? Or are we for coming up with the same old platitudes that resist any activity of government at all to protect the American people? Mr. President, I'm no Janie come lately to this bill. You know, I represent one of the greatest states in America. I'm the state that's the home to the National Security Agency. I have the high honor of being on the Intelligence Committee. I've been working on this topic for almost up to a decade. And I've watched the threat grow as I watched the technology against us grow and power, and watching the number of people that could attack us in this area. I sit on the Appropriations Committee, where as a member of the DoD Appropriations, I've been proud to work with both the authorizers and Senator Inouye to stand up the Cyber Command, the 10th Fleet, which is a cyber fleet, and others related to it. But also, what I've been proud of is to be able to take a look at what we do need to do here in terms of everything from workforce to protecting others. Mr. President, I fund the FBI, and working with Director Mueller, I've been able to see up close and personal the growing threats right here in the United States of America, whether it's the cyber criminals that can literally invade large banking. I could give example after example. Working also with other departments, we can see that they're in cyber attack. We need to be able to do this. So, Mr. President, I could give other examples, and I will do so on the debate. But let me summarize us. The attacks are now. The question is, are we going to build cyber bomb shelters? Now, this isn't like the old bunkers of old. This is where we work with the private sector. Remember, our grid and our telecommunications is owned and operated by the private sector. We cannot do this without the private sector. So we, your government, comes together with a legislative framework that's constitutionally sound, legally reliable, the fact that we will make the best and highest use of our military under that rubric. But at the end of the day, we will be able to have a voluntary framework bringing the private sector together with incentives, particularly around liability, that invites them to participate in the formulation of the regulation, the implementation of the regulation, and living by it. This is not regulation that leads to strangulation. This is regulation that helps them be able to protect the United States of America. So let me conclude by saying this. Everybody says, gee, what could I do? Could I have protected an attack on the United States of America? What's that little old name group we didn't know how to spell 10 years ago? Wasn't it called something like Al-Qaeda? Would we have done anything in the world to protect the 9/11 attack? I certainly would. I certainly would. But I say here today, if you want to protect the next big attacks on the United States of America, vote for cloture. Let's have an informed debate. Let's find at the end of the day the sensible center that will give us a constitutionally but effective way of defending the United States of America. Mr. President, I yield the floor.